All right, good morning, everyone. How's everyone feeling? Hi. Nothing like summer in July, right? For those of us that have been born and raised here, I feel like it's getting hotter every summer, or I'm just getting older and weaker. I don't know. But it's definitely hot outside. Thank you guys for coming out. Like Amy introduced me, I'm Nick Bernal. My company's called Seasons Farm Fresh. And I wouldn't necessarily consider myself an expert like Dr. Campbell and Dr. Crane and all these other academics in mangoes. I'm more on the commercial side. I started my company actually selling fruit out of the back of my car when I was doing my graduate work at the University of Miami. So I am a fruit hustler, I prefer to say, more than an expert or an academic. But in the last 15 years, I've learned a lot about mangoes. We grow mangoes not just here in Homestead, but also in 8 other countries around the world. We're always looking for new mangoes. We bring in mangoes from as far as India, Pakistan, Thailand, South America, the Caribbean, and we'll get a little bit into that during the talk. So the name of my company is Seasons Farm Fresh. We've been around almost 14 years now, 13 years. I lose track of time. We import tropical fruits, so not just mangoes. We do about 45 different fruits, everything from guanábana to chirimoya, mangoes, longan, lychees. We do mangosteen, rambutan. So we have a whole profile of tropical fruits that we import to the United States. We distribute throughout the US. We have accounts like Costco, Walmart. We're in Sedanos and Presidente, so everywhere in between. A lot of ethnic trade, a lot of Indians, a lot of Latinos, a lot of Caribbean people love these fruits. So that's really what gives me the passion to do what I do. So here's just some of the fruits. I think I have a screen that we bring in. You know, some of our more popular fruits. Chirimoya, soursop, guanábana. Mango is probably our biggest fruit by volume that we do. We do roughly 3 to 4 million pounds of mangoes a year between domestic and what we import. So it's very important for people to understand, especially in the United States, that mango is the most consumed fruit in the world by far. I didn't put a graph here, but you can go online and look. Mostly because of India and Southeast Asia, but mango trumps grapes, trumps tomatoes, trumps every other fruit that we have by multipliers 3x, 4x, 5x. So specifically in the US mango market, it's good to know that 98% of fruit is imported. And it always hasn't been like that. You know, we used to, 50 years ago, when mango was lesser known, most of the mangoes were supplied from South Florida, from California. There's a few areas in Texas that grow mangoes. But because of the growth of the mango over the last 10, 20 years, 98% of the fruit has to be imported. And as you can see, it's very interesting to note that there's a 63% growth in consumption per capita over the last 10 years. So if you look at the metrics, mango and avocado are the 2 fastest growing fruits year per year. They compete. One year it's avocado. It's usually avocado, and I think there's been mango a couple of years in the last 10 years. But more and more Americans, not just people here in Miami and New York and California who have been exposed to mangoes, but people in the Midwest. We have clients in Iowa. We have clients in Nebraska that are asking for mangoes. I mean, I was in Omaha, Nebraska at a supermarket, and I saw a mango display that would put this to shame. And I was just floored seeing people who've never had a mango 5 years ago, and they're coming in buying 3, 4, 5 mangoes. So mango has just been growing in the middle part of the country, and that's really fueling the growth. I can't really see here but because of this fern, so I'll walk a little bit. The lion's share of the mangoes come from Mexico. They're our closest neighbor. They have a very long mango season starting in March and going until October. They dominate the mango season right now. You also have counter-seasonal to that. You have Brazil, Ecuador, and what's the bottom one? And Guatemala. They come in to supply because now mangoes are a 12-month supply, right? You go to your Whole Foods, you go to your Publix, Trader Joe's, wherever, you can get a mango 365 days a year. When we were kids, you got mangoes 3 months out of the year, and that was that. And you were happy with it. But now everybody wants mangoes. It's becoming very popular in cuisine. You see a lot more chefs using mangoes and fresh mangoes. And in the trade, we say there's 2 main categories. There's red mangoes and there's yellow mangoes. So the yellow mangoes are like the Ataulfo, the small Mexican mangoes, the Madame Francis from Haiti, which is an amazing mango, the Hayden. Hayden's actually considered a red mango. Keat, Kent, and Tommy. These are the 6, according to the National Mango Board, these are the 6 most popular varieties imported into the US. There's thousands of varieties. I mean, in India, there's a mango variety in every village. In Pakistan, the same thing. So, but there's probably commercial, I would say maybe 50 to 100 varieties, but there's thousands of varieties of mangoes. There's seedlings of mangoes in people's backyard that are different varieties and nobody even knows what they are. So this is a graph to kind of show you the imports of mangoes by origin throughout the US. And if you look at the green, that's Mexico. So you can see when Mexico's in, and the volume is in millions of kilograms. So we're talking a lot of mangoes. When Mexico is in, they kind of dominate the market. Really, nobody else brings in mangoes. This time of year, we bring in a little mangoes from Colombia, little mangoes from Jamaica. The Haitians and the Dominicans have good mangoes that they bring in, but the Mexicans dominate by far. And then you can see the other part of the year where Mexico doesn't have, you have Peru, you have Ecuador, and you have Brazil that really dominate the market. And this is something interesting, just about the pricing of mangoes, where it goes. When Mexico is in season, you know, in the June, July, August, the price is down. This is a price per box. So it's a 4-kilo box, so almost 9 pounds of mangoes. So if you do the math, it's less than 50 cents a pound is what the prices are sold at. The growers get back maybe half of that if they're lucky. And then the rest of the year, the prices tend to be higher because of logistics. You know, it's coming from farther away. Brazil, Ecuador, Peru have a lot more logistics. The Mexicans process the mangoes in Mexico and then run them across the border in trucks, so it's a lot cheaper and faster. So this is a map I put together of where we actually source mangoes from. And you can see, I mean, I've brought mangoes from as far as Australia. We bring in mangoes regularly from India and Pakistan. Very expensive mangoes from those 3 countries I just mentioned. But I say that I'm not really a salesman. I'm telling a story. And there's nothing more rewarding than I've been in Brooklyn and I met an old Pakistani lady. She's 85 years old. And she hadn't been home in 50 years. And I was there when somebody presented her with a box of mangoes and she started crying. And that's when it really hit me that mangoes are a way of life for so many people, especially to reconnect with their countries. If you're working in Alaska and you're from Jamaica and you get a box of Julie mangoes or East Indian mangoes, I mean, you'd pay $1,000 for that box because it reminds you of home. You can close your eyes, just like I can, and remember being at somebody's backyard, eating a mango, getting all messy, having to hose yourself off or jump in the river. And that's really what mangoes are for me. It's telling a story, and that's why the market just keeps growing, because as more and more immigrants come to this country, they want to eat the foods that they ate back home. And I think that Americans are starting to appreciate that more and more, because most people in the United States, maybe I'm generalizing, don't have that connection to fruit. Maybe to a food, you know, if you're Chicago and you miss a deep dish pizza, or you're New York, you miss a thin slice. But in countries like India and Pakistan and Colombia and Mexico and Dominican Republic and Jamaica, they have this strong affinity towards certain fruits. I mean, you give people a soursop and they go crazy. Like, they'll cut your arm off for a soursop. I've seen it. So the farthest we really source from is, you know, Southeast Asia and Australia. The Australian mangoes are beautiful, very expensive, but these are newer varieties. The R2E2, the Calypso, there's a couple other varieties that have been developed. And then within this country, you know, we have a lot of mangoes. We source from California, we source from Florida, Dominican Republic, Haiti, Grenada, Guatemala, Mexico, and then Colombia. We just opened up the market 2 years ago. We started sourcing from there, Peru, Ecuador, and Brazil. So in following, part of the reason I think they chose me to speak to all of you, whether you're in the industry or not, whether you're a mango aficionado or not, is because the mission of this place, this sacred ground that we're on, and the mission started by David Fairchild, I'm kind of living his dream and living his mission, because I'm always, part of my job is business development and finding out where can we bring new things to market, because you always have to be innovating, whatever business, whether you're selling mangoes or selling tires. You've got to be thinking what's the next thing. So we work very closely with USDA in getting market access for new countries. These are the 3 biggest, in terms of mangoes, things that we've worked on and got access to. So in 2019, we brought Jamaican mangoes back into the market. There was a huge infection of Caribbean fruit fly in the late 90s and the early 2000s. So basically everybody got shut down, and we're just starting to get countries back on board now. So Jamaican mango, it's a very small program. It's mostly small growers in St. Thomas and in the southern coast of Jamaica. But man, Jamaicans are fanatical about these mangoes. I mean, they love mangoes. Colombia, we just opened up the market for the first time ever in 2022 with the mango de azúcar. It's a very small mango. Unfortunately, the season ended early, or we would have had some here today, but it's a very small, very nice mango. You can eat the skin, eat it almost like an apple. It's really nice. And Grenada, we also opened up in 2022. They grow a bunch of different West Indian cultivars, the Graham, the Long, the Ceylon, and the Julie, which is a fan favorite. And currently we're working on Honduras, working on St. Lucia and St. Vincent, a couple more places to open up, just so that we have more variety of mangoes. Now, these mangoes don't move in volume. You know, the Mexicans sometimes move 3-4 million cases of mango a week across the border. We're moving a few thousand cases from each of these locations. So we're not competing with the big volume, but we are kind of building the niche market for people who really are willing to pay a little bit more for a better quality mango. And then this is something that I'm not a advertising media person, so I can't take credit for this, but people on my team, this is something that we've developed over the last couple of years. We're really trying to revive the whole concept of mangoes being grown in South Florida. For those of you that are from here, which is probably most of you, I can tell you that growing mangoes is not a profitable venture. When your land is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, who's going to grow mangoes, right? And you have to pay labor costs that are going up, fertilizers, trimming, certifications, liability insurance. You got to worry about a hurricane. Will the mangoes produce or not? There's so many factors that go into. So really, agriculture in South Florida is kind of dying, unfortunately. I mean, there's people who are trying to keep it alive in Homestead, but a lot of the older generations, when they go, the next in line are just saying, it's easier for me to sell the land and make my money now. So part of an initiative we're working with the National Mango Board is something we call the Miami Mango. And we're trying to revive these older groves. We're getting stuff certified organic. We're trying to find a niche in the market where we can compete with a Florida tree-ripened mango. Most of these mangoes are Haydens, Keats, Tommies, but we also get other varieties of mangoes from growers that we work with. So this is something to look out. We did a program with Whole Foods last year. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it this year because of I would say scheduling conflicts, but because of the bad mango crop, which is down about 30% of what it was last year. But keep an eye out for this. You know, we're looking for support near and far. It's interesting to know that most of the mangoes we grow here, at least in my case, end up in Canada. So it's the Canadians seem to love Florida mangoes. I just wish more people in the U.S. would demand Florida and U.S. grown mangoes so we could really start planting and really try and revive the industry. Here's some pictures of mangoes, just different packagings. This is the mango de azúcar on the left. Right here you have, I think that's a Mingolo right above it. These are just different types of mangoes and how they come. These are some mangoes from Colombia. I'm going to talk a little bit about the way that mangoes get treated. They have to be irradiated. Some more pictures of mangoes. We're constantly doing shelf life studies, especially on the newer cultivars of mangoes. It's really important for people to know that when you have a mango, because people call me all the time, hey, what about these mangoes in my backyard? I like to eat mangoes tree ripe in my backyard. When I touch that mango and it comes off, that's when it's ready to eat. But unfortunately, when you're shipping to New York and Chicago and Atlanta, there's a supermarket that needs to have 3 to 5 to 7 days of shelf life. So you have to pick the mangoes a little bit less mature than we would normally eat here. So we're constantly doing these shelf life studies, trying with different things like 1-MCP, trying at different temperatures, trying harvesting different times. And that's a big part of our business is research and development. And I'm not sure if I mentioned, but there's an organization called the National Mango Board, right? It's one of 16 federally created organizations in the mid-90s. And basically the goal is to promote the consumption and the education and everything about mangoes in the US. They're not prejudiced on domestic or imported, but basically a percentage of every sale of mangoes, every import or every sale locally of mangoes goes to the National Mango Board. They're based out of Orlando. And what they do is they have these funds that they disperse to different projects. And a big part of what the funds go to is research and development for the benefit of the industry. So it's, you know, we're very fortunate that we have this type of board and that they support us, you know, with different initiatives. My partner, who's not here today, he's actually on the Mango Board as a first handler. I'm running to get on. There's 22 seats. So we're trying to help cultivate the importance of US grown mangoes, because unfortunately, as you saw, 98% of the mangoes are imported. So the Mexicans and the Peruvians, the Brazilians have a lot bigger say than the US producers, but we're trying to really put our feet down and get the importance of continuing to grow mangoes in the US, because this is really where it all started. Most of the commercial cultivars that come in from other countries, the Tommy Atkins, the Hayden, they're from 5 to 10 miles within here. So all these mangoes were created in South Florida, yet the original Haydens and the original Tommies and these groves that are here in Pinecrest that are 50, 60, 80 years old, nobody wants those mangoes anymore because of a price point. So that's what we're fighting against. Logistics, another big part of what we do. You know, they're very perishable. Most mangoes come in by truck from Mexico, but mangoes from Brazil can take 21 days to get here. Mangoes from Peru and Ecuador could take 10, 12, 14 days to get here. So you can imagine the logistics involved are quite hefty, and it consumes a lot of our time, unfortunately. The mangoes from India, from Pakistan, Jamaica, Australia, the higher end mangoes all come by air freight and they get irradiated. So it's a much better, much more realistic tasting mango, in my opinion. I'm not knocking the hot water treatment that's done on other mangoes, but I prefer irradiated mangoes just because you can pick them.
But very expensive.
They're very expensive, yeah. We'll get into that, but there's a cost for everything, right? You could drive a Toyota, you could drive a Rolls Royce. So that's what I tell people. You can go buy a Tommy from Mexico, or you can go buy a Bangapali from Pakistan, and one's gonna be $4 and one's gonna be 40. So most of the mangoes that are harvested for the hot water treatment are harvested between stages 2 and 3. So all mangoes that come into the US have to be treated for fruit fly. That's a USDA mandate. So there's a few different treatment options available. The most common one, 99.9% of mangoes are treated in what's called a hot water treatment. Basically, it's a jacuzzi, it's a glorified jacuzzi. You pick the mangoes, depending on the weight, you have to cook them at a certain temperature. I think it's 46 degrees Celsius. I could be wrong. I'm not an expert in that, but they're cooked, and that basically kills any flies. Unfortunately, the drawback, it's very inexpensive. It's done in the country of origin, so when it comes here, it's very easy to get into the commercial markets. Unfortunately, you have to pick the mango a little bit more immature. If you've ever had a mango at the store, if you're from South Florida and you've eaten mangoes off a tree, or you're from anywhere and you've eaten mangoes off the tree, and you go to a Publix and you buy a mango, you're gonna notice a difference in taste. Even when it's fully ripe, to me, it doesn't taste the same. But that's how they keep the prices down. Our mangoes, the mangoes that I bring in from India, from Pakistan, from Colombia, from Jamaica, we bring in and we irradiate them. And those mangoes we try to pick between stages 3 and 4 so we can get them closer to tree ripe. So for me, it's more of a realistic experience of what a mango in origin actually should taste like. But then again, as this gentleman said, there comes a cost. You could pay $4 or $40, you know? And I throw this is like my slide, I throw in all my presentations about irradiation because people hear it and they start freaking out. Irradiation, basically, people hear it and they're like, oh, Turkey Point, oh, I put my foot in it and it becomes radioactive. That's not what irradiation is at all. It doesn't make food radioactive, it doesn't compromise the nutritional quality, flavor, or appearance, and it actually helps to improve the shelf life. What radiation technology does, and there's 3 different types, I won't get into it, but it's basically like a big scanner at the airport, like an X-ray scanner, just cranked up a little bit more. So you run the mangoes through and it sterilizes any pests that are in there. It doesn't kill them, it sterilizes them. But for some reason, we're working on this with the government and the FDA. The name irradiation isn't really user-friendly, especially for the Trader Joe's and Whole Foods crowd. So we're kind of working on this. This has been a 5-year work in progress, and I think it's going to be another 5 years. So it's something to note, but in terms of mangoes, it gives you a much better quality mango. And this is just some foods that are in the market right now that get irradiated. A lot of people don't even know that they are buying irradiated foods. They just hear the name and they freak out. A lot of meat is irradiated. A lot of seafood is irradiated. And these are just some shelf life studies on irradiation. I mean, we've done these on, comparing fumigation and irradiation seems to win basically every time. I don't want to drag on to that. So the whole point of my presentation really is, I'm not an expert, I'm really a fruit hustler more than anything. I want people to eat more mangoes. It's good for the mango growers, it's good for my business, but it's also good for you. It's a healthy piece of fruit. This was a picture that somebody sent me. I think the store's in New Jersey, but in the middle of mango season, I mean, you can see how many different types of mangoes. They don't do this in South Florida because generally everybody and their mother has mangoes, so when you go into work or you go into school, people are handing you bags of mangoes. But this year, a lot of people don't have mangoes. I don't know, I try to convince the stores to do it, but the mango is becoming a bigger and bigger piece of fruit in the American lexicon of fruits. And I'm happy that you guys are here to support the mango by supporting Fairchild, by supporting the growers. Buy a mango tree, try some new mangoes, see what you like. Oh, and that's it. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Why no mangoes this season? Why no mangoes this season?
That question you could probably direct better at Dr. Crane or Dr. Campbell than me. I'm not an expert. Last year was a bumper crop. We had a lot of mangoes last year. So sometimes mangoes and a lot of fruits you see, they take a year off. But it's also climactic too. We had a lot of bloom. Different weather factors when the bloom was happening, a lot of bloom didn't stick. In commercial groves, like in our groves, we spray the bloom in order to get it to stick, but this year just a lot of it didn't stick. So my estimates in my grow, and I can speak to my groves and other groves that we buy from, we were about 30 maybe 35% of what we were last year. So it's probably, I would think that the mangoes are taking a year off and some climatic factors happen because worldwide, I mean, I've seen the same thing it's funny, what happens in this hemisphere usually happens in the southern hemisphere or vice versa. So in Ecuador last year was a very bad mango year. In Peru, it wasn't a good mango year. In Brazil, it wasn't a good mango year. So now I think we're seeing those effects here.
Pakistan, India also.
Pakistan, India are also down, but they produce so many mangoes that it doesn't really matter. They're on another level. Oh.
Hold on a second. I have that mango in my house.
Looks like a Valencia Pride.
Valencia?
Valencia Pride. When did you buy it?
No, here in Homestead.
Pero hace cuántos años?
Oh, maybe 20 years.
Sí, puede ser Valencia
and this
Pride.
was 2 pounds.
Yeah, puede ser Valencia Pride.
Valencia. Thank you.
Yes.
Question I have is, in the year 2024, you still go to stores with mangoes that are intensely fiber, that are, you think you have a good one, you get it home and you go, and this is the year 2024, come out of Mexico or wherever. Why?
That's a great question. So the mango varieties that you see, most of those varieties that you see in the stores, they're grown out of the country, but they were developed here. Tommy Atkins, Hayden, Keat, Kent. They're not my favorite mangoes. Probably not your favorite mangoes either. But from what I understand, the Tommy Atkins, which is the most famous mango, it's a very good shipping mango. So you could ship it far and it lasts. And when it blushes, it turns red like an apple. And when they were developing these varieties for the American market, what did Americans know? They knew apples. So a lot of mangoes are the yellow ones, the mangoes from India and Pakistan, the mangoes that I like, the ice cream mango from Trinidad, they're ugly. When you eat them, they look horrible, like you should throw them away. But that's the best time to eat them. For the American consumer, which is a big part of our problem, only 20 to 30% of the fruits that people harvest on their farms actually make it to the supermarkets because the supermarkets only want a certain size, they only want a certain ripeness, they only want a certain spec. It's got to be beautiful fruit. So any little scar, anything that's natural, nothing to affect the fruit, they won't take it. So for that reason, the Tommy and these mangoes that are a little bit more fibrous have been selected and have been pushed to the public as the mango. Now, my opinion and what I'm pushing is that the same thing that's happened with grapes and with pineapples, and I'll explain to you what I mean. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you went to the supermarket to buy grapes, what did you have? You had red grapes and you had white grapes, right? Now you go in, there's cotton candy, and the same thing with apples. There's 87 varieties, and you can taste the difference. And people are paying for that difference. Regular grapes might be $1.99 a pound, and cotton candy are $3.99 a pound. And my wife still goes in and still buys the $3.99 a pound grapes because that's what the kids like, right? I think mangoes are about to go through that next renaissance. Once the logistics, once certain things get fixed, where the price point can come down, I think people are going to start seeing, instead of just one mango at the store in Publix, you're going to see 3, 4, 5, 6 varieties. And people are going to start picking, and the stores will start saying, hey, these Tommies, these things aren't selling. The other mangoes are selling, so let's start bumping these up.
Hello, I got another question over
Sure.
here. So my concern is, since we have the land and the climate to grow mangoes, but when we go to, even to farmers market, the local mangoes are more expensive than imported mangoes. What can we, Unity, to plan for the long run when local mangoes are cheaper than imported mangoes?
More expensive, you mean?
Right now they're more expensive.
Right.
I'm thinking of the long run.
They're not. Local mangoes will never be cheaper than imported. It's never going to happen. Because the land costs here are so expensive, the labor cost, your minimum paying on the farm $15 an hour, minimum. Some guys get $20 and $30 an hour. In Mexico and other places, they're paying $10 a day, $15 a day. It's very cheap. So mangoes are a very labor-intensive crop. You're never going to be able to grow mangoes here to compete with that. It's just not going to happen. And with the land prices, so if I'm 36 years old, if I wanted to go buy 50 acres in a homestead to plant mangoes, you're looking at $10 million. What I could buy for $10 million in Mexico or in Colombia or something, I could have 10,000 hectares, a whole farm, irrigation, everything. So,
Labor expensive.
excuse me? Labor is very expensive.
I pay $50 each tree for pruning.
Right, you have to prune the trees, and $50 is cheap. $50 is cheap. Yeah, fertilizing, pruning, certification, workman's comp. It's very expensive. So what I'm pushing all the growers that are top working all their old groves, or anybody that wants to plant mangoes commercially, they have an acre or whatever, they want to put something. I'm pushing for the newer varieties and newer cultivars that you can get more money that they're not importing. There's certain varieties here that they're growing very well. The Maha Chinook is one I'm seeing take off. The Asian varieties where you can command $3, $4, $5 a pound on the wholesale market, which makes it worth doing the business. That's my best recommendation, but we're never going to replace those mangoes, unfortunately.
I've got to thank Fairchild. They've introduced me over the years to several mangoes. I want to say half a dozen years ago. They had somebody here who had a Pakistani mango. You've mentioned it now 3 or 4 times. I don't know what it was.
So probably a Bangapali or does a lot
It
of...
was the most amazing mango I've ever had, and I spent $20 for a mango. I did it with a smile on my face. I've never seen it since. So if you know what's going on,
I know if you want the person that was here, Jadid is a friend of mine. I can put you in his contact with him. Yeah, look, the price of mangoes has to come down. I mean, these specialty mangoes are amazing. They're orgasmic. They'll change your life. But $20 a mango is a little ridiculous. Even with inflation, it's kind of expensive. But I'll put it to you as somebody put it to me. You would go, most of us that are, I don't want to say normal because that's not PC, but most average Americans, you go out to a steak dinner and what would you pay for a steak? $60, $70, $80, $100. But people who love fruit, I have a lot of clients that are raw vegans, I have a lot of clients that are fruitarians, and they said, that's our steak. They go pay $20 for a mango happily. So when you start to think of it like that, it kind of changes your perspective. Because at first I'm like, wow, people are really spending all this money. I sold a guanabana for $120 one time. It was a 10-pound guanabana, but that's what the guy wanted to pay for it. And the look in his eyes, this guy was a vegan. He was so happy, and when he explained it to me like that, I finally understood. So we have to work on these newer varieties. We got to get the cost down, because when you go, like the gentleman back here said, if you're in Iowa and you think that a Tommy is the best mango you ever had in your life, and you eat a Pakistani mango, you're like, what was I eating before? I was eating shoe leather, and now I'm eating something else that's so incredible, that has such an explosion of flavor and such an insane dynamic on your palate. That's really what we're doing here, is educating people.